Yeah, Brooklyn.
And Chud.
I'm in the booth doing my Joel Ortiz dance.
All right.
There you go.
Dude,
buddy?
nothing. What's up with you?
Not much. I like the hair.
Thank you. It's growing.
Clearly.
Yeah. For some reason, I never use Zoom. We always use Google Meets for work. I don't know,
Really?
probably 'cause it's free. So literally, and then this is a computer that my work gave me. It's blocked, so I can't download Zoom. So I have to join by browser. But I figured out how to do it.
Yikes.
I know it's a mess. That's why I said Hangouts, but whatever.
It's too late now. We're already recording, so.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Can you see me? I can't.
Yeah, no, I got you. It's a nice little sunset in the background.
All right. Yeah, I'm wondering if I should move locations or if the windows right behind me might not be ideal.
Let's see what you can do.
You know what? I should put my Celtics wall behind me anyway.
Yeah, there we go. It's more.
Have you seen that? You've seen Ross's drawings?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't seen
I've seen some of the drawings, but I haven't seen the collage. Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's glorious.
Right.
Are there any doubles up there? Or are those
Oh no, not a single one.
Is that just everyone in the rafters?
Oh, and then some. I think it's every current player who was even on the roster. He's got Romeo, Taco, Ennis, and then every legend or pseudo legend to the point where I was reaching for some, but
no doubt.
Yep. All right.
So you want to jump right into this?
Yeah. What do you think? Is that all right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. You look good.
Yeah, I guess the video doesn't really matter.
No.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's what I figure. Kind of just open it up, introduce it. Maybe say what time it is, so that if people are listening, they know that it's
What time is it? Let's see.
I don't know.
It's
the night of the draft, before the draft.
4:10, night of the draft.
Yeah.
So what time is the actual first pick?
I think it's at 7, but let me make sure. It could, because it could be one of those coverage starts at 7.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I got the Twitter machine going here too, just in case there's any late breaking.
Yeah, I got Woj bomb notifications on, so.
Of course.
Yeah,
It's been on for a week.
I know. That's what I'm hoping is we don't do a whole preview and then they announce a
Right.
Well,
if you know what you're talking about, you should have been able to foresee it.
Well, that's true. That would be the coolest if it was something we mentioned and then it happened. But
Right.
then they wouldn't believe us when we recorded it.
Hmm.
I have no idea.
Understand
I can't find the actual start time.
Well, it's probably sometime between 7 and 10. So
It was ridiculous. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Maybe my TV will tell me. 2020.
let me see.
I think it's just on at 8.
Really? All right, we got plenty of time to put this out then. Let's see. Yeah, they don't really want you to know.
Look at this. It says from 7:30 to 8 on ESPN. It says 2020 NBA draft, and then in the info it says the virtual NBA draft hosted by ESPN from a studio in Bristol, Connecticut. Then from 8 to 11, it says a 2020 NBA draft, first round. NBA teams are in selecting amateur United States college basketball players and other eligible players.
Gotcha.
Oh,
It's very specific. Yeah.
It sounds like 8 o'clock is the move, but either way.
All right. Well, I'm glad we've settled that then. Okay. So this is going to be a learning experience for me, hopefully. Because I think we know between me and you, I'm more of the NBA expert when it comes to us, and you're more qualified when it comes to college ball. So.
Right. Yeah, I never really
bring you in. Yeah.
Thank you. Glad to be. We can teach each other a few things.
Yeah, exactly. So we got some show notes here. So before we get into the draft, I want to know a little bit about what's going on with Hayward. If there's any late breaking developments. I mean, obviously there was the extension to the, commitment, but is there anything going on? Any word?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it makes sense to kind of start with maybe just taking the general temperature of the Celtics and where they're at. And I guess right now that really does revolve around Hayward. So I mean, he's keeping it pretty close to the vest, it looks like. So all speculation. At the end of the day, who knows what he really wants right now? But I mean, from what we can read between the lines, the fact that they both agreed to extend the deadline, you'd think is good news for something getting done. Because if he had a big offer, say the Atlanta deal, why not just opt out and take it if that's what he wants? You know? If they're really offering that and that's what he wants, he would have just opted out and taken it. So the extension leads me to believe that either they're trying to renegotiate an extension and he'll stay in Boston, perhaps. They'll negotiate either picking up the extension and trading him or signing a deal and trading him to people seem to think Indiana is the desired location. And so people have speculated that it could be something as simple as maybe Indiana is waiting for the 14th pick. And then if the guy they want is still there, they'll pull the trigger. If not, things will change. So, I mean, again, it's like I said, Hayward is kind of like a domino that could affect everything else, but also seemingly could be affected by some other things. Right. So it's kind of an unknown, but I think we could kind of get the answer to the Hayward situation at any minute. And, there were rumors today from Mark Stein, who was not really a guy to just put out rumors. So, I take what he says pretty seriously. And he was the one who said the Celtics were looking to trade into the top 3. Yeah. So kind of, the immediate obvious speculation was Golden State because they have the number 2 pick, and it would probably make more sense for them to add a veteran like perhaps Hayward than a rookie with that, aging kind of core in their last hurrah of their prime or whatever for Golden State. But then, Charlotte at number 3, someone else reminded me something I forgot about, that when Hayward's rookie deal expired in Utah, he signed the offer sheet with Charlotte.
It's true.
And Utah, of course, matched, and he stayed there. But I had forgotten about that piece. So who knows, maybe Charlotte is a surprise destination. And, we kind of, after we signed Kemba last year, we kind of helped out Charlotte and threw them a bone with the sign and trade of Rozier. So maybe they owe us one, and we work something out there. So
is that how it works?
Well, hey, we'll see.
I just don't see how we get into
Jordan
the top 3.
Right? So
that's true.
And I mean, Jordan hasn't always been the most sound decision maker as a GM, so owning the team.
Doesn't have the best track record as an owner, but
right. So I think basically this is a long-winded way of saying there's a lot still on the table with Hayward, and we don't really know what's going to happen. But that is for sure involving all of our picks tonight in some way, and probably everything really that we do the whole offseason.
So what would your ideal scenario be with Hayward? I mean, realistic.
Well, at this point, I mean, I think there's a few realistic options, and they all start with basically leaving for nothing is the worst possible outcome. Obviously, at this point, we don't want that. If he opts in and stays on the team, I'm fine with that. We're a very good team, and he's still a very good player. And if he opts in, he's also a very good player who's an expiring contract. So as long as he opts in, we either have him or trade him for something else. So that's great. And then if he doesn't opt in, but he opts out to sign an extension, whether that be to trade him or keep him, I'm fine with either at this point. So, I mean, it's hard to say what's ideal without knowing what we could realistically get back. But, I mean, if we're talking somehow getting, a top 3 pick back, that'd be great. Even the number 6 pick with Atlanta has been speculated. I'd be fine with that. The worst case outcome, again, is that kind of Atlanta's the team and they play hardball because they have the cap to just sign him. They do that, or at that point, we'd have to hope for just a sign and trade to end up even taking on like a $30-something million trade exception would probably be the outcome there. So
what would be
kind of the worst outcome of a trade up to, a good Miles Turner, obviously, or, a higher lottery pick, or him just opting in and staying.
I love the Miles Turner idea. The more I think about it.
Well,
I don't know how you feel about Miles, but I think it'd be a nice fit. He's under contract, and I don't know, young, fits the timeline.
Yeah.
No, he's not like the best defender, but he can block shots.
No, I'd be open to it. And I mean, again, as we said, at this point, it's kind of like anything is better than nothing. So, I mean, obviously Turner is better than losing Hayward for nothing. And yeah, I'm willing to see what his fit would look like because, like you said, it's one of those things that the idea of it sounds great, but when you actually watch him play and you actually look at what he does on the court, it's kind of like it doesn't really match up with all the parts. The whole aren't as good as the sum of the parts, so to speak, with him. It seems like he can do a little bit of everything, but he's not really actually that good at any of it, maybe. But again, I think a change of scenery, put him with maybe a coach who can utilize him better and some better playmakers, and maybe we'll see a new and rejuvenated Miles Turner because he certainly has the skill set we're looking for.
So, what would be the least return you think would be worth it for Hayward? I mean, would you rather have him opt in and keep him for the year, or get what would be like the highest pick or the lowest pick you would take for it?
I mean, anything beyond Atlanta at 6 just doesn't really seem that realistic. And again, Atlanta is really the only team that could strong arm us with the cap space to just say, we don't, they would have the leverage with us because they could just sign him as an unrestricted free agent at the contract they want. So that's the hard part where I can see Atlanta just saying, why are we going to give you the 6th pick for a guy who we can sign tomorrow anyway, or, when at Friday, whatever.
Right.
So that's kind of the scary one. Like I said, if Atlanta does that, we may end up just getting either nothing or just a trade exception, which isn't nothing, but it would seem disappointing in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Danny's used trade exceptions to net a lot of talented players. I'm pretty sure that's how we got, I forget who, but one of the superstars we've acquired via trade, somewhat. Was that maybe Ray Allen? I don't know. I forget, but those have netted us superstars in the past, so and that's not the end of the world. But like I said,
it is better than nothing. But it's like
it would feel like nothing in the.
It would feel like nothing.
Right. It wouldn't help us immediately, at least. So.
I mean, losing him we lose a lot of flexibility as far as what we can do this year and future years. Because I mean, an expiring max contract. I mean, we're not going to have that sort of flexibility to make moves with, anybody of significant salary.
Well, no, that's the thing is if Hayward leaves, and honestly, even if he doesn't leave, unless, like you said, we trade him for a completely new player or high pick that is essentially a new piece of the core, hopefully. We're pretty much stuck, and any major developments in the team are going to really come from within. It's going to be one of those young guys developing into a better, a starter, a better role player. Tatum Brown taking another leap. Kemba looking like the Kemba before the knees. Things like that is really the biggest changes that are going to happen with this team. Because otherwise, without the Hayward piece, there's no real. We could strike gold on a draft pick, but that's really it. Otherwise, it's going to be, the mid-level exception, the veteran minimum. Like that.
I'd love to trade Hayward in for a few depth guys, really. I mean, if we could do a 3-for-1 and get a big man, bench wing, maybe just a shooter or something. If we can just get a few, I know it's easier said than done, but give you a few contracts to work with so you can work out trades maybe, I don't know, down the line. I mean, we just have no tradable contracts.
Well, right.
After Hayward. We're not going to move on from, Jalen, Jason, probably not Marcus. I mean, Marcus has the most tradable contract, but he's not going anywhere.
Well, right, exactly. And I think one of the funny things is, and people will view this as having Celtic glasses on if I said it in a serious way, but one of the things that making the toughest for Danny to compete in the trade market is that all of our guys are signed to good contracts. Yeah. We don't, you're looking at the Drew Holiday trade the other day. We don't have an Eric Bledsoe and a George Hill making $10 million a year to throw in. We have our players are paid well, or Marcus's salary is below value. It doesn't make sense to throw him in because for that money we're not going to acquire a player better than him. So it's we're almost screwed over by our lack of signing shitty contracts. Where if we had some, if we had more bad players making too much money, it would actually be easier to facilitate some of these trades. But like you said, we have either guys who are too good to be worth trading, or our worst players are underpaid. Or
So you're saying Danny's too good of a general manager? Is that
almost?
okay?
It's almost the case. I mean, when you look,
Gotcha.
it's hard to craft trades because we don't have salary filler.
Right.
Anyone with making real money is good.
All right, so we're on the
Not
record.
having-
Danny's too good of a general manager.
He's too good for his own good. He he handicapped himself.
So I guess in lesser news, what do we have with Cantor and Semi? I mean, those are pretty much the only outstanding players on the roster that don't really have we don't know what's going on with them, right?
Right. And their options are they now have the same deadline as Hayward, which is tomorrow, Thursday.
They all extended?
No, well, there were different timelines to begin with. I'm not really sure why or how that all works, but
All right.
the Semi and Cantor's deadline was always Thursday, I think at 5. I don't know why Hayward's was Tuesday at 5, but
Right.
whatever. And for the record, it's what now, Wednesday at 4:30,
Yeah.
a couple hours before the draft. So I think Semi is a team option. So it's hard for me to see us picking it up unless it's, we pick it up and sign and trade for a second round pick to someone or something.
Right.
But I think at this point we don't have the space on the roster. We have one available spot. We've got 3 draft picks. So I hate to say it, but I think there's a good chance we just don't pick up that option. And
Really?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the draft shakes up. I mean, if we end up trading all the 3 picks or something and don't add anyone, then that could be a different story. But I think if we draft any players tonight, I think we have the 47th pick too. So I think we have 4 picks tonight. If we want to add any of them to the roster, it's going to be tough.
I mean, would you rather have Semi or a late first?
Well, we'll see who it is.
Right. I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to. Because
I love him, but I think he is what he is at this point.
Yeah.
And he's certainly replaceable, to say the least.
Yeah.
So.
No. I mean, you're right. He is what he is, but we know what he is. I mean, who knows what the 27th pick is going to be?
Exactly. Well, right.
Or 26th.
Or even that piece as an asset is more tradable than.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And also, if not for nothing, Semi could probably play more minutes on other. There's a lot of teams where he can play defense and he's versatile, can play some positions. He can stand in the corner, and there's a lot of teams out there that could do worse than Semi as their 7th, 8th man. So I won't be surprised if he is suited up in Celtic green for the last time. Cantor, well, I mean, who knows with Cantor? It's obviously a player option. You kind of hope that he opts out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he'll be able to make more, so I wouldn't be surprised if he opts in. And I don't know.
That's a pretty tradable contract if he opts in. I mean, $5 million. That's like you can find someone for 5. Package a couple other players and picks. I mean, you can get somebody back probably.
I think he would be the guy that he'd work as just contract.
Right.
I think his option's like what, $5 million, something like that.
It's 5. Yeah.
So I mean, how I feel about Cantor. I think he should never see the floor for this team again. Guy, seems like a good locker room guy. He seemed like he was a good bench guy and a good sport when he basically on the games when he wasn't in the lineups, and when he got called on, he did what he could do, and he's a total once in a while matchup. Throw him in there, and he'll get you 12 points in 10 minutes. But other times he'll give up 12 points in 5 sessions.
Sure. It's a little give and take with him.
I think the Cantor and Semi will kind of just see how those shake out after the draft, but I don't think that either guy will be at least a real part of this team.
Wow.
Going forward.
So assuming they're gone, and let's say Hayward's back, picks up his option, how many roster spots do we have?
Oof, geez, I don't know, 2, 3 maybe. But then it gets into things, I don't have the roster in front of me, and I don't know all the details of the 2-way contracts, and I think we can draft a second round guy and send him to Maine, but I'm not sure. I think the guys who would be on then the bubble would be like Javonte. Do we want to get rid of Javonte Green or then add the 30th pick? And that's where I think it gets a little tougher.
Right.
And I don't know what the deal is with Carson Edwards, Tremont Waters, all those guys. So I think those guys are at the point where if we can make a splash and add a guy, they might be on the outs. Like, let's put it this way: we're not going to miss out on an impact player because we don't have the roster space.
Right.
Well,
as we should.
Right. Cool.
All right. Well, maybe we should transition to the draft now. So, just general thoughts. What do you think? You think it's going to be a lot of action, a lot of trades, or you think it's more just, people are going to fall into place and we're just going to get a lot of picks?
So, I mean, I think for you, the thing with this draft, everyone has said that it's a bad draft, which I think is basically there just isn't the star power at the top, and especially the sure thing, can't miss guys. There's a clear-cut top 3 in whatever order. It seems to be Edwards, Wiseman, Ball. Probably in that order, if I had to guess. And I mean, they're good, but I don't think you'd say any of them are necessarily can't miss stars.
Right.
And next year is stacked with those guys. So that's been the knock on this draft. But I think a lot of, GMs and scouts have said there is a lot of good depth and talent in this draft. It's just, who's going to be able to find it. So, so I think, that's could benefit the Celtics potentially having 3 picks in the mid to late first. They might end up with as good a player as guys who go in the top 5 or 10 would be my general take on the draft. In terms of the action, I think there will be a lot of action. That's what, Woj and people have seemed to say. But at this point, people are kind of waiting to see how the draft shakes out. And as it's happening, we could see a lot of trades in real time or even after the pick has been made, how they'll kind of call in the pick after the trade,
right.
whatever. But the idea is that there might be a lot of that because teams have been trying not to tip their hand. And like I said, I think the first 3, if that's not the order in some order, those 3, that would be a pretty big upset at this point. But I think the Bulls at 4, I've seen a lot of different players mock to them at 4, and they've done a good job of not tipping their hand. So I think that's kind of, when they make that pick, or that could, I'm sure they're trying to get someone to trade up to 4 by not saying who they're going to pick, so that if you want anyone outside the top 3 for sure, that's who you got to call. And so, like I said, I think once we start to see how that plays out, like I said, the mock drafts are so all over the place. And again, factoring in that college basketball shut down, there was no March Madness. So a lot of these kids, it is so much more unknown. So I think it was always expected that like all the mocks would be all over the place because, there's so much, and the whatchamacallit, the combine, the draft combine, workouts, stuff like that. It just hasn't been the same because of COVID and all that. So I think teams just know less in general. And I think there's, like I said, just from looking at the big sites mock drafts, they're way more all over the place, where usually everyone has kind of a small range. But I'm seeing, for example, like Denny Avija, I think is his name, from Israel, Serbian kid. And, I've seen, I think the ESPN mock has him going like 4th to the Bulls. And then I've seen another mock where he's like late lotto or in the teens.
Yeah.
And a bunch of different people, I've heard probably 10 different guys rumored at 4. So I think, like I said, teams probably all have their own rankings. And once they start to see how they fall, if a guy they had projected at 4 or 5 starts slipping to 8 or 9, then there's going to be a lot of teams trying to move up.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, considering it's pretty level, not like a level playing field, but there's a lot of players on the same sort of tier. So, like you said, it's just identifying your guy.
Right. Preference.
Identify a guy, and then wherever he ends up landing, you go and get him or drop back to get him.
Yeah, so I think we'll see some teams being aggressive, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, so that is a recipe for a lot of draft day trades. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping for that, and I think that would be fun.
LaMelo's draft day outfit released. Let's see. Not great.
Not great. Uh-oh.
Oh, he's got the number 1 on the back of the blazer, though.
Ooh, wow.
Does he know something?
That's not going to look great. Work out.
Let's see. All right, so I think top 3 said consensus in some order. Probably Edwards at this point, Wiseman, and LaMelo. I mean, assuming everybody stays where they're at.
Well, yeah, exactly. Assuming that. And I think, too, to bring it back to the Celts, that if we were to move up into the top 3, which I think we both think is probably a long shot, I think we're probably on the same page that the guy we'd want and would assume the pick would be Wiseman, just for fit with kind of Brown and Tatum.
Sure.
But at the same time, we all know how Danny works, and he loves lengthy kind of wings and combo guard players. So wouldn't rule out anything at this point. But common sense would lead you to believe that Wiseman is the guy the Celtics would target if they're trying to move into there. And he's a dream, versatile, super athletic big. Who would seem to be the ideal kind of NBA center for 2020, and potentially the missing piece in young Celtic big 3. Then you'd have a 22 and a 21-year-old wing, budding stars, and potentially another one at center who's 7'1". You could see the the reason to do that, I guess.
Right.
But I don't think either of us expect that to happen. So we probably shouldn't spend too much time.
Let's not waste too much time on that.
Yeah,
we can all pray though.
Right.
So, I mean, who do you like? I mean, who are your targets, I guess?
Sure. So my targets, first in general, the guys I like at the top. I mean, I like Wiseman for those skills, but I think for where they're going, again, Edwards and Ball both kind of scare me, and I don't think either one is a sure thing. At least be, a star. They both have pretty obvious flaws. So moving past that, I mean, guys that are projected to go around the top 10 that I think will be really good. Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State, I think, is just a guy who's going to be, a floor general, leading that team before too long. Reminds me of kind of maybe like a Donovan Mitchell type, but just he seems can't miss to me that he's going to be at worst a really good player.
Really?
But I just don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the Celts, and he's probably in that range kind of after 5 and before we'd pick at 14. So not sure he's realistic. Pat Williams, whose stock has been rising a ton, the kind of the big versatile wing from Florida State. I think he's 6'8". So he seems like he could be like an ideal stretch 4. I like him a lot. He's a guy, if the Celtics were going to trade with the Hawks to 6 or the Pistons to 7, I could see him going if he's still around. But he's another guy who now they're saying the Bulls might like all the way up at 4. I get to mess up the guy from USC's name, but Okongwu. He's to me the one that if the Celtics move to 6 and pick him, he's like almost on the tier with Wiseman. I mean, I think it's a lot of the same stuff, but it just seems like a more realistic get. He's obviously a little smaller at 6'9", but we saw him play. He's super versatile. He can handle it like a perimeter player. He can switch onto the perimeter, block shots. He has nice shooting touch, great hands, good passer. So I mean, the more I started looking into him, the more I was kind of getting excited. So if there's a move to be made, I would think and hope that that's who it would be for. It just actually came out, I think, this morning that he has a broken toe. So, I mean, that shouldn't
not ideal, but
long term. But maybe if anything, that'll make him drop a little. So, if any NBA GMs are listening, you should stay away from him until it gets to 14.
Damaged goods.
So he's probably the guy who sticks out the most outside of that top 3 as someone who I'd like to go make a move for if we got up there. And that's really it for like the early lottery. I like Killian Hayes, the French guard. I think he's about a 6'5" point guard. Not the most athletic guy, but just crafty. They say he's already got like a veteran feel, just a great feel for the game, playmaker. And he's a lefty, obviously, so they get the Ginobili comps, a little D'Angelo Russell, maybe that kind of player. Seems already ready to play, dominating over in France. So again, he's someone I think the Ringer has him number 1 on their big board. That they think he's the best prospect in the whole draft.
Really?
And then I've seen other mocks that don't even have him in the lottery. So he's another guy where I don't know what to make of him. But like again, one team loves him. They see him past 5 or 6, and maybe they jump, or maybe he falls to 14. But he's, as a prospect, I'm very intrigued by him. And then I guess as we get lower than that, it would get into more guys that if the Celtics don't make a trade, I would hope to be available at 14. But those are really the only guys, like, sure thing lotto picks, I think, that I really like.
I'm seeing here that you're not a fan of Toppin.
So
I've been kind of
I
kind of like this
don't
guy.
see. That's the thing. I am a fan of his. I like him a lot. I mean, I am a college basketball guy.
Right.
I'm an A10 guy, so I love seeing a team like Dayton up there, and he's fun to watch. He's a great dunker. He's unreal athlete, and I mean that Dayton team was awesome. He was a lot of fun. Now the reason I'm scared is I just don't. I'm not sure how well his game projects to the NBA, unfortunately, and he reminds me a lot of someone maybe like an Aaron Gordon, who I think he'll be certainly a good player, but he's kind of that in between range where he's not. He doesn't have the he's not a very good defender in general. He's a very bad off-ball defender. He's not really a great rim protector either, so I don't think you can put him as a center, but then I don't think he's not a good enough shooter or handler to play the wing, so I think he's kind of stuck as like a tweener who's not. I'm just not sure what his like eventual NBA outcome is, other than like I said, being kind of like a Aaron Gordon type, who I think is a little disappointing, frankly. So I think Toppin, I do like Toppin a lot. I just think that if you're drafting him top, 5 or even 10, you're probably going to be a little disappointed. I don't see him as a guy who's going to make all-star teams. Which, so he could prove me wrong, but he's, I think, one of more, he'll have highlight reel plays, and maybe he'll be in the dunk contest or something, but I just don't see it on defense. I don't know if he's ever going to be a good enough shooter. And he's brutal in the pick and roll. It's, I don't know. I have concerns, let's just say, for how high I see him projected.
It's fair. It's a fair concern. So I guess we'll stick with this. And I mean, who do you see going, high lottery that you could see just being a complete bust?
Okay, so I mean, he's the first guy I listed as a bust. Beyond that, I mean, like I said, there's so much uncertainty. Almost a lot of the guys almost aren't hyped enough for me to really be considered bust. Because, like I said, once you get outside that top 3, they all the risks and flaws are obvious, and no one's saying these guys can't miss.
Sure.
So it seems almost unfair to call anyone outside of the top like 5 or 10 a potential bust for those reasons. No one's saying
instead of a bust, let's say who would you stay away from, basically?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, again, if I had the number 1 pick, I like Edwards, but I'd be a little scared that he's not the purest shooter, and this kind of for ball too. Like LaMelo, he's just not efficient at all. And it's just like, are these guys going to be able to become kind of the best versions of their potential? And I'm scared. You know what I mean? If you've got one of those picks, you're doing it. But I think this would be a year you'd want to trade if you can.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only other guys, like I think Denny, the Israeli guy, I'd be worried just because it feels like everyone watched Luka and Porzingis and doesn't want to miss the next guy. But I'm a little worried there. Just
I've watched a little bit of him. Like highlights or whatever I can get. And I mean, I don't really know what he does. I mean, he doesn't seem to be like a great shooter.
Right.
I mean, what does he do?
Well, I mean, I think the fact is that he has like a perimeter game, but he's bigger as a wing. He was very effective in a very competitive league playing for Maccabi Tel Aviv or whatever.
Whatever it is.
He was like the youngest ever MVP of the league. So he's obviously a really good player. I just, again, it's, you're drafting a guy so high, and I'm not sure. And I think, would he be, I can't remember last year if there were any Euros drafted early or foreign players, but, he'd come with everyone thinking the next Luka. And I think that, those are tough shoes to follow for the next, whoever the next top 5 or so European pick is. They're going to be expected to kind of probably step in and be a star right away. And
that was like everybody was looking for the next Dirk for 10 years, just whip every time.
Yeah, exactly.
So we could see that trend again for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Or, I mean, and the kid could be great. He's, like I said, just someone, if I was drafting 4th, if I'm the Bulls, I would not.
Too risky.
Yeah, right. I mean, at a certain point, he falls to, 10. So why not?
Yeah, sure.
And then the only other guy I had listed even as a bust, which I don't want to say bust because this guy's might not even be a lottery pick. Is again, I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but Precious Achua, however you say it,
Yes.
Memphis, who is a guy that
Achua.
I only put him in because I've seen a lot of people speculating that he'll go to the Celtics. So I just wanted to mention that I just don't see it. To me, he's like your clunky big man from the 90s who the NBA game today does not cater to his skill set, and I just don't see the point of taking him, I guess. I don't see a scenario where he has a better chance of seeing the court than, Tice, Time Lord, even Grant Williams.
Sure.
I'm just kind of out on his skill set, and I guess there are other bigs in that range that I would much rather roll the dice on for what they could become, even if, right now, maybe not.
Seems like every big is 6'9", and every guard is 6'5" in this draft.
Yeah, that could be.
Other than Wiseman, he's
right.
a 7-footer, but like, are there any other real 7-footers?
7-footers in there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean that's kind of
I guess that's the game now.
The going.
So I do have a question. What happened to Cole Anthony? I was under the impression that he was like a lock for high lottery to start the year, and then all of a sudden he's been slipping down to like the 20s. I'm looking at a lot.
Well, I mean, for one, he tore his meniscus and had surgery, so that derailed his hype in the moment. But then I think a lot of the hype. Obviously, he's Greg Anthony's son, correct?
Sounds right.
So I think he had the hype train. He goes to UNC. He's supposed to be the next big deal. And then he's good, but he's not great. He forced a lot of shots. He wasn't that impressive of a playmaker. Before the season got shut down, like UNC was not a good team. And I think a lot of people watched and were like, oh, he's a good player. And I think he'll probably end up more as like a good bench scorer than anything else. Cause I don't think he's a guy you can trust to run your offense. And he was just really streaky. He settled for a ton of contested looks. And I mean, again, who knows? That might have been the team he was on.
Yeah.
But, he didn't really just seem to like make the team better. He was kind of just a pure scorer who wasn't very good on defense. Frankly, he could cover other point guards and stuff, but he's not a plus defender. He's not. He wasn't switching a lot and doing kind of more than what was there. And like I said, that UNC, and they were bad. And so I think kind of people watched and were like, not so sure. And a comp that I saw thrown around for him, which I think is apt because another guy who was the son of an NBA player was Austin Rivers, who went to Duke, and everyone had him as the top pick. And then he was kind of like, oh, and he's kind of settled in as like a whatever solid.
Yeah, he is what he is. He's fine.
Yeah, and I think that's probably Cole Anthony's
right
final destination as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ringer right now. Killian Hayes, best prospect. Big boy by Kevin O'Connor.
There you go. So I think that kind of just goes to show how all over the place the so-called experts are on this draft.
Right.
And then you got something like what we said with the Bulls, which I think is smart. In this, it's such a unique situation. Why tip your hand? The more other teams have to guess, the more valuable that pick is for them at 4 if they are trying to trade it. So,
of course.
Yeah.
Wow. No updates on the Twitter machine. Just checking again.
No, I got my Woj notifications on, and I mean, I think it's fair to say at this point we won't hear of any trades going on till the draft.
Probably. So sleepers, late draft, late first, late lottery. Is there anybody you got your eyes on?
So in terms of sleepers, I would consider sleepers guys who I don't think are going to go in the lottery.
Sure.
So the guys I had put down, Desmond Bane from TCU is a guy who is just really good shooter, just kind of does it all, but nothing like special, so he's never going to be a lottery guy, but he's a kid who I just think will will overachieve probably from the minute he kind of gets on the court and starts playing. I think he's someone that'll help right away, can do a lot. He's I think he's 6'6", but played guard, just super smart player. He's older too. I think he's already 22, so he's senior. So seniors in college aren't like allowed to get picked in the lottery, but I think it could be like a Malcolm Brogdon type pick where you feel like as soon as you see him on the court, you're like, oh, this kid was really good in college. We just didn't want him because he's 22.
Yeah,
we know
right.
potential, but it turns out he's already good. So he's one that I think some smart team will take at early second, late first, and we'll be like, oh, that was a no-brainer.
You see you get a lot of value players like that, seniors that
and those
play, but because they're 22 or 23, that means
right.
only get them for 10 to 15 years, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, those guys are championship teams are almost always littered with guys who are really good college players, and kind of like the hype died down, and then it kind of levels back out, and you're like, oh yeah, they were good all along. And those are kind of generally the kind of guys I look for as sleepers in the NBA, because those are the guys who end up slipping. It's like the more unknowns and potential is what it's all about, and those are the guys people take a chance on. And then the guys who what they are, but what they are is just good players, are the ones who slip through the cracks. And so those are kind of the other players. I had Peyton Pritchard from Oregon, same thing, just a really, really good guard, super smart player, clutch, competitive, edgy, fiery, picture like a TJ McConnell, but also way better at offense.
Okay.
Same thing. Someone will get second round. He'll be just an absolute pest on both ends.
Yeah.
Tyler Terry, I think is the name, from Stanford. He's a kid who he's a little small. I think he's only 6'2", and he's skinny kid, but when he gets streaky, he is a crazy shooter. He played for Stanford, so he's a good guy who I think again will come off the bench and be fun right away, like an Isaiah Thomas type microwave type deal. And then Azubuike from Kansas, who got hurt, but he was again a guy I watched, and he's just a dominant down low guy. So I'm seeing him going in the 40s, second round and stuff.
It's a big boy.
I can think him as someone who, he can come in and he is what he is, but if he's your first big off the bench, I think you could be very happy with that as a second round pick. So
I'm seeing a 7'7" wingspan for this man.
Yeah, he's a beast. He is a beast. And he was, like I said, he was dominating in Kansas. So he's another one where I watch and it's like he's on one of the best teams in the country, and he's one of, if not their best and most dominant player.
Right.
Why can't he have a home in the NBA for years?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those were the only guys who I kind of figured were post first round, possibly sleepers with, they could go late first. Well, I mean, like I said, who knows? Nothing would surprise me, but those guys all project as probably second round picks who I like.
What do we think of Cassius?
He almost made my sleepers list, but I felt like he was almost too obvious in what you're looking for. But I'm just not sure. Just the combo where he seems like he's just lacking size and athleticism. Not like a lights out shooter. I'm not sure. I'm not sold there.
I liked watching him.
I'm rooting for him. No, he's a player I like. I'm not sure he'll have a long NBA career.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to the Celtics, I guess.
Yeah, we probably should.
So what do you think they should be doing with these picks? I mean, I think ideally we'd love for them to trade up, but
sure. If
they make a trade, what do you think it should be for, and like what's a realistic option?
Right. So I mean that's the key. That's the last thing he said is realistic option, because people love to say Danny should have done this, he should have done that, this is what he should do, blah, blah. First of all the other teams know that is what he should do or wants to do, so they're not just gonna gift it. And again, it's hard to know what he should do without knowing what he can do. So again, ideally we'd like him to. It makes no sense, seemingly, without other moves, to add 3 first-round picks to this roster. So somehow it would be nice to consolidate players or picks. And then the most obvious and most rumored thing is, trading these 3 picks to get into the top 10. Mm-hmm. So I think, we already kind of briefly touched on that, so we won't revisit it. But the ideal situation would probably be to trade those 3 or something to Atlanta or Detroit for 6 or 7 than to land on Wu Ku or whatever from USC.
Yeah.
Is probably my easiest, my most simple, this is what they should do, this is what I want them to do. But again, we have no idea if Atlanta has any desire to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it takes 2 to tango. So, maybe these other teams have no interest in doing that. But if they're not sold on a guy in the top 10, maybe they'd, like I said, could be a deep draft where the talent gap is not clear. So maybe a team like Detroit or Atlanta, who has more needs than the Celtics, says give us, 3 cracks at it later over the 7th or 6th pick, which is a mystery. So again, I think that's kind of the most obvious play. Other than that, if they take the picks, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with adding someone at 14 and even at 24, and then at 30, they'd probably have to stash or, like I said, trade the 30th pick or the 26th pick for PJ Tucker. I would love that. Someone like that. I know I keep saying PJ Tucker, but I
would love PJ.
And he's got to be cheap. And the Rockets are cleaning house essentially. They dumped Covington for late firsts or whatever.
I wish we could have got in on Covington.
I do too, but I think Tucker's more realistic, right?
Yeah.
So if we could turn
fit it nicely.
He seems like he would be kind of perfect in a lot of ways for the Celtics team. So if we could turn one of the late picks into PJ Tucker or someone like PJ Tucker, that'd be great. And then we could ship out whoever with that. Maybe that's Semi. We pick up Semi's option and ship him to Houston for PJ Tucker. Whatever. I don't know. I'm speculating.
Right.
But that I would love to see. And then, if we make the picks, we make the pick. Like, it's not the end of the world. And again, I keep saying our stars are 21 and 22. So adding another 20 or so year old who we think could be the third musketeer, is not a bad thing.
Oh.
And again, I know the casual fans are going to hate to hear it. They want to strike while the iron's hot, but that's what dumb teams do. They get too excited. And that's why Philly went all in and got Tobias Harris and Al Horford. And now they wasted the whole process before the 2 guys have even hit their primes. So there's no rush.
Fans are getting impatient. I think that's what's coming down to.
We want to strike while the iron's hot, obviously. We want that taste. But at the same time, again, our 2 best players are 21 and 22. We just made the Eastern Conference Finals. The arrows should be pointing straight up. This could be a 7 to 10 year window to maximize. So you don't want to ruin it going all in year 2 or whatever of that window. We can be patient. And like I said, our natural development is more important than anything. Tatum and Brown taking another step could be enough to get us to the finals. It really could. I don't think that's being a homer to think that, we came within 2 games of making the finals. Our 2 best players will only get better. And, we can, again.
And if we roll out the same team, then assuming Tatum and Jalen take another leap, then sure, we have a shot.
Well, right, but look how much of
hard to just sit back and expect that they're going to take a leap and then expect that's going to push us over the top. So I think,
of course, but
I just want to see some. I want to see some urgency. I'm not saying blow it up and trade everybody for, Anthony Davis, like some people wanted.
Right.
But there's got to be some. You can straddle the line. You can play it both ways.
Definitely, and I think
you said adding like a PJ Tucker, like something like that, I'd be happy with. So like a few players like that, just some veterans that can play meaningful minutes in the playoffs. And
right. No, that's fair. And I I still think that it's too early to say like Langford or Grant Williams aren't solid players, like role players. At this point is what we need. Like Romeo was hurt most of the year, and a lot of times when he played, I liked what he saw. If he could get consistent minutes off the bench, why not? We drafted him in the lottery last year. Like, there's no reason to give up on him. We really liked him last year, so why are we thinking we're giving up on him to draft someone similar this year? Like, people who have us taking kind of a similar player at 14, I don't get it, unless Danny has decided that we're out on Langford, but I don't know why that would be the decision. I still think there's hope for him to at least be a nice bench player. And, same with Grant Williams. I was happy with Grant's rookie year, and he's another guy who I'd like to see those 2 guys take a step forward now as this team and have like a real defined roles this year, not kind of like, and I didn't. Brad was kind of yanking around their minutes for a lot of different reasons. I like to see them settle in as like you're gonna play 12 to 20 minutes every night.
Sure.
And I mean, Time Lord too. He was by the end of the year, but let's get Cantor out of the rotation. If we're gonna run it back, our bench is Marcus. Well, I mean, depending on Hayward and whatever else, but Marcus maybe or whoever, and then Romeo, Grant, and Time Lord. Like that's our bench. Add a backup point guard, like obviously someone to run the offense, and Wanamaker's gone, like that's where we need someone to come in and score with that lineup. But I don't think we need to, I don't think those guys are lost causes by any means. I think we need, someone either another shooter or a guy to initiate the offense off the bench. But that's like it. And if Hayward stays, not even really, that guy can be Hayward, or like.
I mean, I don't think anyone's given up on. I mean, I'm not giving up on Romeo or Grant. I'm not like even suggesting that, but I'm like, I would have no problem moving them for, the right deal. I mean, not even like, I'm not even talking about like a monster deal. Like, I would make some little intermediary, depth guys. I mean, even like, I don't know, if it was like for Covington or PJ Tucker or something like that, I would move them for an older guy that's on a shorter contract and, someone that can help us out now.
Well, right. And I mean, again, then kind of the problem comes back to the reason we couldn't get Covington is because we don't have a salary that would work to make it worth it. Like that's all it comes down to, if Grant and Romeo, like I said, they're still on those contracts that it's almost like that's the thing. When you say you trade them, but find a trade that makes sense, that involves them, it would have to be part of like a bigger trade where we're moving picks and someone likes them as prospects. It doesn't make any sense to me for them to be filler in a trade because they don't have the salary to be filler. I think they're just more valuable to us as prospects, and hoping that they develop into like what we're looking for already seems more likely than returning value in a trade that would be fair to us. And like dumping them for picks, I don't get, because they were picks. So it would be basically conceding defeat already that we botched the picks.
So there's no reason to move them for picks, but
right.
Talking players.
Yeah.
Wow, so PJ's making $8 million. I didn't realize that.
Pretty reasonable.
No, it's reasonable. I mean, but it's also hard for us to match still.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Cantor can be a
that would be ideal.
Can be a sport.
Yeah. Oh, seriously.
I mean, Poirier's got a nice little contract.
Yeah. No, I mean,
movable.
We can certainly get to $8 million.
Yeah.
If we have to, we'll find a way to do that because he's a guy, like I said, he would be a meaningful part of the rotation. I would think pretty much, like right away, obviously.
Right.
He'd be another piece off that bench. He's another type of guy throw in a veteran bulldog defender like Tucker into that bench group I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And then, one scorer.
Yeah.
One scorer to run the second offense, and we're good, pretty much.
So, all right. If we assume no big trades and the Celtics stay pat.
Yeah.
And pick at 14, 26, and 30.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you like at those spots?
So, again, I was trying not to get too carried away with who might or might not be available because, like I said, the mocks are so all over the place. But the guys I listed that just seem like obvious fits if they're there. I mean, Killian Hayes, obviously, just if he drops to us, I think you have to take him. And I've seen mock drafts that have him dropping that low, so I felt like he was worth mentioning. We already discussed him. Devin Vassell from Florida State, I think I'm saying that right, is just like great defender, really good three-point shooter, can create a little bit but doesn't need the ball. He seems like kind of a natural fit, either with the bench or the starters, and he seems like a realistic get at 14.
Yeah.
I put Nesmith from Vanderbilt because he's, probably the best shooter in the draft. So, the Celtics' need for shooting is just obvious. So, if he's someone who could come in off the bench right away, score some points, take some shots for us, that's Aaron Nesmith. 6'6", kind of swing man. like I said, unreal shooter. But the other stuff kind of was lacking. So I think I saw him projected as like a Danny Green or like a Buddy Hield. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
you know,
seeing a taller Buddy Hield right here.
all at Buddy Hield. So that would certainly be something that you'd think would have immediate use for the Celtics.
Right.
A sniper shooter, would open up a lot more. He would create a lot of opportunity for us. Obviously, that would fill a big need, and that's a guy who should be around. Sadiq Bey from Villanova is a guy who you might have seen play being at Villanova. He's just like another guy who's like a bigger wing, would kind of fit with the kind of players Danny really likes. He can hit threes. Good defender, like I said, versatile. He's got that versatile game that we like. So he seems like he'd be a natural fit and a guy also who could step in and help us right away. Then I put for the later pick, Xavier Tillman from Mich State, another guy I like, who I would have kind of had as a sleeper, who I think just kind of did it all for Mich State. It was a really good college player, older kid who will probably drop for that reason, but could probably pretty much NBA ready now, and I think could potentially still be around at 30. So I like that. And then Jaden McDaniels, I think is his name, from Washington, was another kid who's really raw, and I've seen him anywhere projected from slipping into the late lottery to all the way to the very end of the first round. It seems like no one really knows, but he's a guy who I think has a lot of ceiling, and he's another one of those really versatile bigs. So he's a kid who, if you hit on, he would seem like kind of an immediate help. He's tall, he's kind of like a tweener with a wing down low, but super athletic. A lot of people have Jalen Smith going to the Celtics from Maryland. I wouldn't hate it, but I wouldn't love it. He would seem like a disappointing kind of consolation prize if we couldn't move up and get a Kongwu from USC, who seems like the guy I've kind of talked myself into if we're gonna take a big guy, which drafting by need isn't usually what the Celtics do, but he seems to me like the guy who could be worth it and could be kind of that next like Bam Adebayo type, who's kind of the straw that stirs the whole drink. So,
I mean, if we're considering our draft picks, I'm okay at drafting for need, with one of them at least.
Exactly. So that's why I Jalen Smith, if he ends up being the guy, fine, but he seems a little not. I'm questioning like how polished he is and if he'll ever develop into like a guy who can really play out on the wing. Like he might be one of those guys who you say he can switch on the wing, but you don't really want him to.
Right.
So I'm worried that he's kind of being like forced into that role because that's where the NBA is moving, but it's not really perfect for his game. I mentioned Pat Williams earlier as a guy I really like. It sounds like his hype has kind of risen so much that he won't be around at 14. But I mean, obviously you never know. RJ Hampton is a guy who we've been saying it would be a classic Danny Ainge pick because he was, I think, the number one guy coming out of high school. Then he went to play in New Zealand, whatever, and now he's looking like more of a late lottery or late first round pick. But there's almost just too much overlap with what we have. I'm not sure it would make a lot of sense to draft him anymore. But again, that would be vintage Danny.
I feel like we've been looking at RJ Hampton in mock drafts for the last 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Has there been an RJ Hampton in every draft, or is it just the same guy?
Yeah, this is his 5th year, and he just pulls out at the last minute. Tyrell Terry, I know I mentioned earlier as a kid I like. He's one who, with one of our later picks, if he's still around at 26, he's such a good shooter that I think it's worth it. He could help us off the bench. He could be that kind of bench scorer. I just don't know what else. If we're going to stash a guy, it sounds like, there aren't a ton of options at that spot. Alexei Pokseveski, I think is the kid from Serbia, who, I mean, again, he's one of those guys who you watch him kind of play against an empty gym and you're like, oh, wow, this guy's huge. He can do it all, but he's just so skinny. I just don't know if he'll ever be strong enough or quick enough to possibly make an impact at this level. So, it's just so much of a crapshoot is what I'm seeing. So outside of that, like, I don't know that we're getting kind of the next piece. If you're at, I think we're essentially looking for that kind of third young guy
Right.
who will go with Jalen and Tatum if we're drafting. And outside of kind of the short list of guys I just said, I'm not sure that guy's in this draft. But again, I'm not going to act like I know everything. And the way this year has gone, there's so much unknown that there could easily be a guy who, and I shouldn't even say there easily could be. There almost definitely will be, because there are always guys who kind of fall through and end up being stars or whatever. But I guess I just don't love a lot of the guys who are projected lottery. I've talked myself into Okongwu from USC, but if that's realistically only going to happen if we trade up. So like I said, down lower, you're looking at Pat Williams would be nice, but he doesn't look realistic either. Hayes probably isn't realistic. Vassell and Nesmith I like, but I'm not even sure if they'll fall to us. So we're at that point, I can't say I love anyone. Like I said, the guys I just mentioned, Sadiq Bey, Vassell, Nesmith, Okongwu. I'd like to come out of the draft with one of them, but I wouldn't be surprised if all of them are off the board before we're up. So
Right.
yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the long and short of it for these prospects.
So
a lot of mystery.
before Zoom kicks us off, what do you think is going to happen with the Celtics? I mean, just kind of recap everything we've talked about. What's, like, if you had to guess?
Gun to my head, what do I really think is going to happen is a lot of rumors, a lot of smoke, and then I bet we will just make all 3 picks.
Yeah.
I think
that sounds accurate.
Outcome, because again, I think Danny, he's not going to make a trade just for the sake of trading. So if he can't get what he wants, I think he's going to say the most valuable use of the asset is probably the player we like best at 14.
Yeah.
And that's probably what will happen. And then 30 will probably end up being a stash guy, and we'll probably make some smaller trades. Maybe we'll trade a late first for a first next year or something.
Yeah. I think we got to do that, at least one of them.
But I'd say, if you're expecting fireworks, at least from the Celtics, it's probably not going to happen tonight.
We haven't seen fireworks for a couple of years, so I'm not expecting it.
But you know what? Drafting a kid third who is an all-NBA player by age 21 is the biggest fireworks it could be. So I know everyone wants to see this big flashy deal that's going to make us title favorites, but sorry, Celtics fans. Stay the course. Ride it out. Wait till these kids are superstars in a couple of years and we're running the NBA. Hopefully with a third banana that we can add tonight.
All right. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for me. Any other last takes you want to get out there?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered it all. I'm just excited to sit back and kind of watch it all actually play out. And I feel like we've been speculating for so long. And at the same time, there's so much unknown. So I'm excited to just sit back, watch it all happen. And, we'll probably be back soon to analyze the fallout. And then before we even have time to catch our breath, free agency will kick off. And so
we'll be talking a lot the next week, you're saying?
I think so. I think even the next 48 hours or so could be pretty wild for the Celtics, but for the NBA as a whole. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Agreed. It's been fun, Ben. We'll do this again soon. Appreciate your time.
Sounds good. Go Celtics.
Sick as a young Ozzy Osborne to be kamikaze, that's airborne. Pop you like Asti Spumante, body meet the concrete.